Over 1 billion. That is the total number of PlayStation consoles sold worldwide since 1994.
1 billion units across 5 generations of hardware, making it the single most successful gaming console brand in human history.
Not Nintendo. Not Xbox. PlayStation.
And the story of how it got there starts not with a visionary CEO or a billion-dollar business plan, but with a broken handshake deal and one man's decision to get revenge through technology. In the next few minutes, you are going to learn the full history of the PlayStation, from its secret origins inside a contract dispute, through the console wars that reshaped an entire industry, to the modern era where PlayStation dominates living rooms across the planet. And at the center of all of it is one counterintuitive truth that most people never hear: the PlayStation was never supposed to exist as a Sony product. It was supposed to belong to someone else entirely.
Let us go back to the late 1980s.
Nintendo is the undisputed king of gaming. The NES has saved the entire video game industry after the catastrophic crash of 1983, and Nintendo is riding that momentum hard.
But Nintendo has a problem.
Its cartridge-based systems are expensive to manufacture and limited in storage.
The company begins exploring CD-ROM technology as the next evolution in gaming media.
To make this happen, Nintendo partners with Sony. The deal is straightforward: Sony will develop a CD-ROM add-on for the Super Nintendo, and in return, Sony will retain significant control over the CD-based game format.
It seems like a win for everyone.
Then, on June 15, 1991, at the Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago, everything changes.
Sony takes the stage and announces the PlayStation, a joint CD-ROM gaming device built in partnership with Nintendo. The crowd responds with genuine excitement.
The very next morning, Nintendo walks onto that same stage and announces a completely different partnership.
They are going with Philips instead. The Sony deal is dead.
And Ken Kutaragi, the Sony engineer who had quietly championed this partnership from inside Sony's own boardrooms, is left holding a project that his own company had nearly cancelled multiple times.
But here is what nobody talks about. Kutaragi did not give up.
He convinced Sony's leadership that the technology they had developed was too valuable to abandon. If Nintendo did not want it, Sony would build the console themselves.
After years of internal battles, corporate skepticism, and near cancellations, Sony Computer Entertainment was officially founded in 1993.
And on December 3, 1994, the original PlayStation launched in Japan.
The specs were genuinely revolutionary for the time.
The PS1 ran on a 33 MHz processor, supported 3D polygon graphics at a level home consoles had never seen, and used CDs instead of cartridges, meaning games were cheaper to produce and could hold far more data.
Third-party developers immediately recognized what this meant.
Suddenly, creating for a console was accessible in a way it had never been before. The floodgates opened. By 1996, the PlayStation had launched globally and was outselling both the Sega Saturn and the Nintendo 64 in most markets. Titles like Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, Crash Bandicoot, and Tekken were not just popular, they were cultural events. Final Fantasy VII alone sold over 10 million copies and is widely credited with bringing Japanese role-playing games to a mainstream Western audience. The original PlayStation ultimately sold over 102 million units.
Sega never recovered.
The Saturn was discontinued, and Sega would eventually exit the hardware business entirely.
What drove PlayStation's success was not just better technology. It was positioning. Sony marketed the PlayStation as a device for older teens and young adults, a cool piece of electronics, not a toy. The advertising was edgy, sometimes controversial, and deliberately distanced itself from the family-friendly image Nintendo had spent years building. It worked. PlayStation was not something your parents bought you. It was something you wanted for yourself.
Mid-roll break: the PlayStation 2 launched in March 2000 in Japan, and what followed was nothing short of a commercial phenomenon. The PS2 went on to become the best-selling console of all time, with over 155 million units sold. To put that in perspective, it outsold its closest competitor by more than 2 to 1. Part of the reason was timing.
The PS2 launched with a built-in DVD player at a moment when standalone DVD players were still expensive. For many households, buying a PS2 was simply the most cost-effective way to watch DVDs. Gaming was almost a bonus.
But here is what nobody talks about when it comes to the PS2 era. The library was absurd. Over 4,000 games were officially released for the platform. Grand Theft Auto 3 arrived in 2001 and fundamentally changed what people believed video games could be. Shadow of the Colossus, God of War, Kingdom Hearts, Devil May Cry, Silent Hill 2. The PS2 era is often called the golden age of gaming for very good reason.
These were not just successful games.
They established entire genres and subgenres that developers are still working within today. Then came the PlayStation 3 in 2006, and for the first time, Sony stumbled.
The PS3 launched at $599, an almost incomprehensible price point for a gaming console. Sony's own president famously suggested consumers would work extra jobs to afford it. The backlash was immediate.
Microsoft had launched the Xbox 360 a full year earlier at a significantly lower price, and for the first time, Sony found itself fighting from behind.
The PS3 never outsold the Xbox 360 in North America.
It sold approximately 87 million units worldwide compared to the 360's 84 million and near dead heat, which by Sony's historical standards felt like a defeat.
But the PS3 matters for a different reason. It established the PlayStation Network, Sony's online gaming infrastructure. It introduced Blu-ray as the next standard for physical media, a format where Sony won convincingly over HD DVD. And its exclusive library, built slowly but with extraordinary quality, The Last of Us, Uncharted, God of War 3, Little Big Planet, laid the groundwork for what PlayStation exclusives would become known for worldwide. The PlayStation 4, launched in 2013, was Sony's direct correction of everything that went wrong with the PS3. It was developer-friendly, reasonably priced at $399, and launched with a clear consumer message. The PS4 sold 117 million units.
It dominated the generation so completely that Microsoft publicly acknowledged losing the console war. PlayStation 4 exclusives like Bloodborne, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, and The Last of Us Part 2 were not just bestsellers, they were Game of the Year contenders that shifted how the industry valued single-player narrative experiences.
And then there is the PlayStation 5.
Launched in November 2020 in the middle of a global pandemic and a worldwide semiconductor shortage, the PS5 faced supply constraints that lasted nearly 2 years. Despite that, Sony has shipped over 59 million PS5 units as of 2024, and demand has not meaningfully slowed. The hardware itself represents a genuine technological leap: an ultra-high-speed SSD that nearly eliminates load times, a haptic feedback controller that communicates texture and resistance through your hands, and ray-tracing-capable graphics processing.
The PlayStation 5 is not just a more powerful PS4. It is a fundamentally different experience in ways that are immediately obvious when you use one. So what does 30 years of PlayStation history actually tell us? It tells us that the gaming industry rewards the companies willing to take genuine technological risks at the right moment. The CD format in 1994. The DVD player bundled into PS2. The Blu-ray drive in PS3. The SSD architecture of PS5. Every generation, Sony made a hardware bet that extended beyond gaming, and every single time, even when it was painful in the short term, that bet paid off. It also tells us that exclusive software is the ultimate competitive weapon. No other factor explains PlayStation's dominance across 5 generations better than the consistent quality of games that could only be played on PlayStation hardware. From Final Fantasy VII to The Last of Us, the exclusives drove the installs, and the installs drove everything else. The PlayStation began as an act of corporate defiance. It survived internal doubt, a broken partnership, and the skepticism of an entire industry. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Pixel Pulse for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.